if you have a day job, your weekend is over, your week is over. It's time for the weekend. I want to thank my sponsors at 5 Star Guitars, this wonderful company in Beaverton, Oregon, for being incredibly supportive of this show. They are not only laden with incredible guitars and equipment, but they also do lessons and repairs. So if you're in the Portland area, go out to Beaverton to 5 Star Guitars and check them out. You can also go online to www.5starguitars.com and check out the selection. They have no sales tax here in Oregon, so you can save a bunch of money by finding incredible guitars and talk to their incredible staff. Joff Metz is the owner and friend of mine who has been a major fan of this show. So if you go out there, let Joff know that I sent you, and they will appreciate the effort. I also want to thank Audix Microphones. They are on board for a little of assistance for the Back to the Basic, abducted by the 80s NU SHOOZ episode here. So Audix Microphones and Stephen Young, we appreciate you being here. Audix Microphones, another local company here in Oregon. And so it's great to support local. Speaking of local, this band is known for one of Portland's most greatest achievements. Not only that, but they are the kindest and most respectable musicians I may have been around. So I want to get right into this. We've got so many people that are interested in saying hi to you guys. Ladies and gentlemen, Valerie Day and John Smith from NU SHOOZ. Thank you for being here, guys.
Absolutely.
Howdy.
I wanted to point out every episode has a different backdrop. Today we are gathered here with Bob Ross. John's got his Bob Ross. Thank you for making an effort. On the bottom of that shirt, this is good. This is the method for the day. Make art, not war. All right. So there's a mission behind today's show, right? I love it. I love it. Valerie, John, we're going to have a conversation today. We're not going to talk about all those silly questions that you've been asked a million times. So we're going to have fun with this thing. I know that we had some questions that came prior to this conversation, so they're going to end up later on. But I want to know, this beautiful room in the backdrop, is this kind of where you guys have your artistic space? Is this your sanctuary there?
Actually, this is our living room.
Okay, I've only been over a couple of times, but that doesn't look like the area that we did some playing in.
No.
Yeah, there's a studio in the back.
Okay. Oh yeah. All right. So tell me now, it's a really beautiful artistic home, and you guys have art beyond your musical creativity. So you want to talk a little bit about the expression that you guys have with artistry?
Go, John.
Art history. Well, what do you mean exactly?
I'm sorry, your artistry. Sorry, I wanted to know a little bit more about
artistry.
Yes,
right.
sir.
I heard it as art history.
Just turn it up a little bit.
Well, my goodness, that's such a big question. But we've always been involved in music, art, and literature. I started writing stories when I was 7.
Okay.
And we have a son who's an artist. And so we're involved in a lot of visual art too, besides the music thing.
Now, did you do graphic design? Is that some other side work that you've done as well?
No. The side work that I did was in commercial music.
Okay.
It was sort of the best hippie job in the world, but like all jobs, it's heaven and hell at the same time, so I could add music. And the great thing about it was that it was different kind of music all the time. I would do orchestral stuff and then, hip hop tracks behind Intel people saying,
really?
The
okay.
optimization of the community is implemented by our software.
And then you pivot to the Cowgirl Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And the antelope is seeking a mate. So I got to do a lot of different things, and that was a great thing after NU SHOOZ, because obviously writing for one band for 14 years is after a while you want to do something else.
Well, okay, you mentioned 14 years. Okay, so the tenure of the band, you want to talk a little bit about that formation? And really, I know that it's kind of, you've got a resurgence, right? There's a second version of the band that sort of evolved, and musically things changed a little bit with the newer stuff. But let's go back to the beginning. Are you both Portlanders?
There's 7 years 7 versions of the band. But
7.
anyway,
Okay.
Portlander. Are you a
Right.
Portlander?
This could take a while. Yes, I was born and raised here in Portland, Oregon, and I spent a short period of time up in Seattle, Washington,
Okay.
and a shorter period of time in Santa Cruz, California. But yeah, I've lived here most of my life, except for that, short stint
Okay.
at the Cornish Institute of Allied Arts in Seattle.
And you're
Oh.
5th generation.
Yes, there's
Covered
there's
wagon.
covered wagons in my history, or
Okay.
my history, my family's history.
Really? All right. And John, you're also a Portland guy, right?
No, I was born in Cleveland.
Oh, okay.
And I grew up in the Port of Los Angeles, San Pedro, California, RSP.
Representing, there's, I think the NU SHOOZ, I'm sorry, Naked Eyes band also has some San Pedro representation as well. So that's nice to know.
Right on.
Yeah, go
Well,
San
that was
Pedro.
an amazing music town.
Really? Yeah.
I left there at 19, so I really was never old enough to play clubs there. But there was always music around, people rehearsing out of garages and stuff.
Were you gigging though somewhat in that area?
Oh man, I think I played about 3 actual gigs and about 5 parties during my tenure in LA. It was really, I was a kid, so I couldn't go to clubs.
Yeah.
But you would see Mexican bands that played a lot of Santana,
Yeah,
and
right.
black bands. The first band I ever saw with horns was rehearsing in a garage down the street. So there was a deep musical heritage there.
I love that.
Some
That's
great guitar players.
There are people chiming in with other, references to San Pedro bands too. So like Mike Watt and
right.
It's nice though that we've got. I have several different platforms happening right now. So there are chats going on Facebook and on YouTube and multiple Facebook groups right now. And so we've got people from Ireland, the Ginger from Ireland, Marla from Colorado. We've got Loke and all sorts of Portlanders as well. So it's nice to see people representing from all over the place.
That's really cool. We can't see them on our end. So
okay. Well,
hi everybody.
Yeah.
So are there some questions coming in? There
will be some questions. Well, I have a few. Yeah. The questions that Valerie and we were just discussing earlier. This is cool. Let me find them here. Veronica was asking, and this is a tough way to ask this question because people that don't perform these songs as many times as you have might not realize that sometimes it might get mundane and monotonous to play some of the same hits over and over again. But she asks, what are some of your favorite songs and then some of the favorite songs from other artists? So first NU SHOOZ songs and then your favorite 80s songs from other artists. And you can't say Flock of Seagulls.
We're not allowed.
Nope.
Favorite NU SHOOZ songs. It depends on the era. I mean, when we played in clubs for 7 years in Portland and around the Pacific Northwest, but mostly in Portland. And in those days, in the very beginning part of the band, we played a lot of Earth, Wind and Fire, Tower of Power, Steely Dan.
A little Latin music.
Really?
Yeah, just a ton, and a lot of Motown. So, I loved playing all that stuff, but especially the Earth, Wind and Fire stuff. And I loved playing the Steely Dan stuff too. Those were the days when I was singing backups and playing percussion. So there were some great harmonies on those tunes.
And we were the worst cover band in the world. But
why?
We could do that stuff.
Why do you feel like you were the worst?
Well,
hey man.
I think so. In those days, there were a lot of clubs that were just top 40 clubs. And our career in the clubs went kind of up and down for 7 years because, we had over 50 different members. As bands come together, they fall apart, you put them back together. Times change a little bit. And so there was a time period where we were trying to get more gigs. And so we were doing some top 40 shows. And we were bad at doing music we weren't really, really into. I think that's the part.
You weren't selling it.
And one of the clubs we played in a lot was called Artistry, and it was in downtown Portland. And the reason that club was so cool is because the owners, Michael and Peter Mott, they actually required you to play 80% original music, which was like nobody did that.
Who does that?
Right.
I mean, so there was a lot of original music going around, not just at the Last Hurrah, but at places like Key Largo and some other clubs. Anyway, so so we did that best because there wasn't any comparison, first of all. You can't, when it's an original song, you can't compare it to the other band that did it first. And I don't know, we just had a lot of fun playing the music that we were most into.
Okay, so you talked about the bands that you were sort of influenced by, and you were playing those cover tunes. John, you are, I think, one of the most underrated guitarists in the area. Just a phenomenal lead guitarist. And
thanks, man.
It's the truth, man. And when I moved to Portland in '94, I was a big fan of a couple of other guitarists that had really made their name known. Brian James, I was a huge fan of his playing, right?
And
he's perfect for that band.
Yeah.
For that band, for sure. Yeah.
For Dan Reed Network. Yeah.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because of course you can be an incredible shredder guitarist, but it won't really work in a great melodic pop band. But I can hear that you've got those fundamental chops. You just let them out maybe 2 minutes in a show, and it's just at the point where it's really fun to see that, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing, but it's completely written for the song. Like the songs that you guys do are rooted in a lot of the R&B pop vibe, but there are little tiny elements of guitar wizardry. Did you have guitar influences that were really big and inspiring to you early on?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course. And I think I'm underrated because I never wanted to be listed as a guitar player. Like I would say, no, don't call me a guitar player. I'm an arranger.
Oh,
because around 1976 or so, I just realized that arranging was the coolest thing in the world. And I wanted to be the guy playing one note in a large ensemble,
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a whole trajectory of guitar. I wanted to be a pathologist. I thought I was going to be a pathologist, like a doctor that doesn't see patients. Perfect introvert job.
Yeah.
And I walked into the school library in 10th grade, and the bad kid in the school says, "Hey, come here, listen to this." And he put the headphones on my head, and it was Message of Love off of Hendrix, Band of Gypsies.
Nice.
This break in the middle, this 8-bar break in the middle. You know that? Anyway, that ended my medical career. I just walked out of that library and said, I must do this.
And it's a good thing because he actually faints at the sight of blood. So
yeah, I would have been a terrible doctor. I would have abused the prescription pad and, but I went, and then Hendrix was a gateway drug into John McLaughlin and Mahavishnu stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a gateway drug into Coltrane. And that was the gateway drug into Charlie Parker, who's my main man.
Really? Yeah.
He's not a guitar player, obviously.
Yeah. But the sax, you can hear the translation over in guitar.
But that kind of chromaticism and stuff. And then in the mid 70s, I just went, arranging. Big music paper, and you can be the architect. Some people take up music to give something to the audience, and some people take up music because they want to be out front and get girls or whatever. I like the architecture.
Yeah.
I liked the multi-layer, the 4-level chess game that arranging is.
I can still see the parallel between that and pathology, so I could see that. You just took it away from the medical field and turned it into music. And
I always have called him the mad scientist of chords. So
I see that.
Anyway, I appreciate the props as a guitar player.
Oh,
because nobody really notices that. But
well, you think they don't, because there's a beautiful woman right up there in front that kind of steals that thunder sometimes. But when I was with Animotion for a long time, Don Kirkpatrick in that band kind of was that same sort of role. That Animotion was a pop band that wrote these great melodic 80s pop tunes, but Don was this phenomenal guitarist who had just incredible tone and chops. And it was one of the things that surprised me when I joined the band, that I thought I didn't even pick up on that when the band was first on MTV, and then I go back and I listen to the solos of Obsession. And I think, wow, there's amazing stuff here. And, I'm really guilty of so much ignorance with music. I was never a lyric guy until the last few years. I didn't listen to lyrics. Really? Yeah,
never.
It's just music, the melody, and just how the music made me feel was my thing. So I discover all these little things. It's great that musicians know, John, what a guitarist you are. Yeah, I think when we were doing the tours, guys, all the musicians would sit back with their arms crossed and go, "Oh yeah, that's nice." But I should mention to folks that are out here, if you weren't a part of any of these Lost 80s live tours, the really neat thing about this connection with NU SHOOZ is that we, with A Flock of Seagulls, we'd be touring with a bunch of amazing bands from the era, and they became family, So just before we went live, John and I were talking about how we miss each other. I miss these smiling faces, because we develop these connections beyond just playing music with each other, but you're backstage, you're in waiting rooms, and you spend a lot of time sitting around waiting to play. And I discovered these personalities of people that fascinate me. And so the whole idea behind this show is to get to know folks a little bit more than what you might see on stage, for them, for you, and for me. And so one thing that I remember so vividly is the first time that we got to play a show together, Flock of Seagulls, NU SHOOZ, Debbie Gibson, Wang Chung, I think, was also on that gig. It was Meisner Park Amphitheater. And we were just getting ready to do the 80s cruise. We were doing this one-off gig in Meisner Park Amphitheater in Florida. And my ex-wife now, Jen, and I stood and talked to you guys for a while. Big fans. The fact that we grew up here in Portland together, but we really hadn't spent any time together.
Right.
None, yeah.
I just remember thinking, what decent human beings these are. You guys have such an amazing demeanor, and it's amazing that not only comes out in the conversation with it, together, but that's the way you guys are on stage. You present something that is so pure and authentic and sincere, and I'm sure that's why the band is still successful as the return. The 80s has come back around. You guys never really left. You talked about a hiatus, but the band just evolved into different ways, So that was a lot of me talking about how much I appreciate the types of people in band you are. And I'm letting people know that they might not get to see that unless they get a chance to sit down with you. I do want to go back, because one thing I love too is finding out, what would you be doing if you weren't this incredible musician? So John said he was going to be a pathologist. Valerie, did you have a goal in mind before being a rock and roll singer?
I just liked, I loved all the arts. One of the reasons I went to Cornish Institute of Allied Arts in Seattle is because I was excited about putting all the arts together. I liked visual art. I was a dancer since I was 5. I took 10 years of ballet, which kind of ruined me, but I got into modern and jazz a little bit, but until I couldn't afford to take lessons anymore. But all of it informed my life as a musician later. And I always feel like there should be more crosstalk between different artists that do different kinds of art, because there is so much, there are so many things that we can actually share with each other that could make all of our art better. There's a really cool show called Abstract on Netflix that, have you seen it?
I haven't.
Oh, check it out.
It's incredible, because it focuses on one designer or one kind of artist for each episode. And I just think if you're any kind of artist, you should sit down and watch it, because you end up being all those things. I mean, nowadays, especially if you're a musician, you've got visual stuff that you need to put out, you know, and if you're into it, if you don't have somebody for you, diving deep into that world can also inform the music you make. So yeah, I don't know. I think if I hadn't become a musician, well, at the ripe old age of 14, I realized that I was not going to be a dancer. If I was a male, I think I would have, because it would have been less crowded for sure. And it was also very competitive. Not that music isn't competitive, but I like team sports better than real competitive sports where, you know, not everybody has space to be themselves. And so I just realized, you know, also if you're a dancer, you're over, you're done in, you know, too early in your lifetime. And so being a little bit practical, I also thought, you know, people will still be able to, I'll still get hired to play music at a bar mitzvah, but I won't ever get asked to, you know, paid to dance at one. Oh, so I was like, thinking. Okay, I think I'll be a musician. Choice? Yeah.
It was
Say
conscious?
That again?
It was a real conscious choice to make that switch at that. Okay.
Yeah, it was a real conscious choice. And I also decided not to be any kind of, I was really into calligraphy and graphics and paper making and all that kind of thing. And actually that ended up being really helpful for website design much later, because I'm really into fonts and color and all that kind of thing. But I also decided that I needed to be around people somewhat, even though I'm more introverted than extroverted. And so being an artist also wasn't for me. But anyway, yeah. So
it's interesting that you talk about both of you being introverts, you know, because I would say that I'm not, but
I would say that too.
You know, it's interesting that I talked to a lot of introverts during the pandemic. You know, they've said this is the perfect opportunity for us introverts to just self-isolate, because that's what we do. And I do know that my friends that are extroverts are struggling with the lack of connection, you know, not just being able to talk to people, but touch, intimacy, hugs, those kind of things. You know, I'm a hugger.
Huggy guy.
You're a great hugger, by the way, Kev.
I miss the hugs. It's really been strange to go 6 months, you know, without hugging anyone other than my pug and my kids. But, and I have to be really careful of that too, because the people that do know me from stage know that I sweat incredibly too much. And, and so when we're on stage and I'm hugging you, I just really have to, you know, kind of preface, hey, grab a towel, you know, but
you're wet.
I know it's great. You know, the last show we all did at the Greek Theater on tour a year ago.
Right.
The
what
Tubes,
a beautiful place.
Beautiful place. And the Tubes were on that gig. And after sound check, Prairie Prince was coming back. And I said, hey, just a heads up, when you go out there, it is so humid. You're going to sweat your butt off. And he goes, dude, the only time I'm sweaty on this gig is when you hug me. I said, oh man, okay. That's my nickname now, Sweaty Metal. It's horrible. But
Sweaty Metal. I love it.
And then when we were in the Dominican Republic, my gosh, you guys, like, was it?
Oh my God. That was the most humid place I've ever been on earth, period.
He put his guitar wait.
Well, no. My guitar.
In the room.
I've never had any problem with the guitar that I travel with, but it started to bow up like this until it was unplayable from the humidity. This never happened. And so I thought, well, first of all, I arranged to borrow one from somebody else, but then I thought, I'm just going to put it out in the sun and dry it out. So I laid it in the sun for 4 hours and it was playable again.
Oh man.
That's how humid the Dominican Republic is. Yeah. I've been to Vietnam and Guam and the island of Biak, where they used to refill the B-24s.
Really?
And, you know, a lot of places like that. Grew up in California, you know, and I've never seen anywhere as humid as the Dominican Republic. I think we spent a week there.
Yeah. You know,
and my sheets were never dry.
Yeah, I know that's true. Those rooms, it was tough. I mean, they had dehumidifiers and, you know, I think they had just had a major storm just prior to us all showing up down there. Because when and I'll touch on this. I forgot to talk about or mention this to you guys, but one thing that I loved was that you guys have a ritual when you travel to support charities when you show up in different locations, and you encourage travelers to go out and support, in need charities. So they had just had a major storm on that island, and I had gone out on zipline adventure, and I came back and they passed by all these schools and markets and everything that got destroyed from the hurricane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
all the cattle were all wiped out on the
Really?
island, and so they were having to eat goats and other animals.
Wow, you must have gotten there earlier than we did, because I don't remember this part of it.
Well, I went a couple of days early prior to the thing. I'd never been to the DR, and I wanted to go on vacation, but it was amazing how, when you left the resort, right, that was so much different. You get the culture of the area, and I'd rather do that most times. I'd way rather go out and see what really makes a culture versus, a resort that looks the same, whether it's in Mexico or the DR or,
right. Could be anywhere.
It could be anywhere. And why go all the way across the world unless you're going to experience some of what they have to offer? So they had just had this experience, this tragedy. They're pretty used to hurricanes down there, but they were repairing and rebuilding the schools. And I think you were the ones that found Pack with a Purpose, that charity where you could go and you found school that needed the help, and you had the band all gather together school supplies and materials in order to bring out to these kids in the school. And you brought that idea to Steve Robinson, who was doing the 80s in the Sand event, and said, hey, if other people can do this, maybe we can help the school even more. And a lot of the patrons and the fans and the attendees jumped on board, and they wanted to do this. And over the last few years, they went out and raised more money to build a school. They had done a lot of work because of what you guys started. And I'm not trying to
Kevin, I didn't realize that actually that went on beyond that first trip with you, because you were one of the people that jumped on board really quick and said, I'd love to do this. It's such a great idea. I mean, if you're going to travel anywhere, even in the United States, in some areas, they have a list of things that people need in that area. And you don't go to the nonprofit or whatever. They actually will come pick it up from you, or you'll take it to an area. So you're not like imposing yourself also on people that maybe don't want you there. They maybe they don't need the extra work of having these people come in and give them stuff, but they appreciate and need these items. And if you can just take out a couple things in your suitcase and throw some pencils and pens and notebooks in, I mean, what a great thing to be able to do.
And it makes
to give back to the
difference.
Community that you're traveling, to.
Instead of just taking advantage of their economy and but you can contribute in other ways. I think I was really encouraged by the amount of people in the 80s in the Sand community. They call them the Sanders. Now they have their self-reported name, but so many people jumped on board to help them and help the organization, not just Pack for a Purpose, but for the local community. So in the transition, I know that Steve was actually setting up the Sands to move down to Cancun. And the idea was to find another charity that was in need in that area as well. Again, you've got resort areas that are doing well for that part of the community, but you and I both know that, those economies are really decimated in a lot of ways. And so, and
they will be moving forward.
Oh my gosh.
When people are able to start traveling again, they're going to need a lot.
And it doesn't take a lot. From each individual person. So, this wasn't meant to be, sort of a soapbox on that. I just thought I was really impressed by your generosity and your willingness to sort of put that forward. And it was helpful. It helped a lot of people in a lot of ways. And it also inspired those Sanders to do something positive in addition to going and getting their vacation with a bunch of 80s rockers, So I commend you. I think it's awesome.
Well, we have a lot of privilege, and I mean, it's just because we have so much. It just seems like the right thing to do. Always.
And it hasn't stopped. I will say, if you guys follow Valerie online, Valerie's always promoting this. I think this real positive direction, and I've got a friend of mine in town, Jason Fellman, who's caught me a couple of times when I get involved in social media and I react in kind of a volatile or negative way. And he said, remember the meme that you sent me a while back that said, promote what you love and not focus on what you hate. And you're a huge proponent of that. I mean, it says so right there on your shirt, John. And I know you too, Valerie, you're great with that. I love the idea that people can have an escape where there's some positivity here. Your music is all about that. Your demeanor is all about that. I would love to know, John, you mentioned that we could talk about what, so there are a lot of people I speak to that have silver linings that they find in the pandemic, whether they see a new craft that they pick up or they pick up another instrument. John, you guys collectively have been working on some new stuff since the shutdown. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Our son Malcolm is an artist.
Whoops, hold on. I forgot to turn off the phone.
And I've always been an artist, but he got the real drawing gene. He started at 3.5 and never did anything else really. And so 6 or 7 years ago, he said, Dad, why don't you make a comic? And this turned into a whole graphic novel thing that, and so during the pandemic, we've just had an art factory going on back in the studio. And we each have about 3 graphic novels going.
Really?
Yeah. And one that we're working on together, which started as we were on a plane coming from Cleveland back to Portland. And Mal said, Dad, tell me a story. He was 9.5 at the time. And so I said, I'll make you up a story. This ended up being a 7-year epic story that went from when he was about 10 all the way till high school ended. I was telling him this epic long story. So now we're starting to produce that as a graphic novel. Really? And I have a trilogy going called the Girl Trilogy. It's like 3 stories with female protagonists. And so, yeah, it's been really great. Actually, I have a lot of pandemic things going on, and both Mal and I put them into time slots. Like I'm studying Spanish and fingerstyle guitar and doing these graphic novels. I had a health scare and I lost like 20 pounds. I got scary skinny. And I don't like fake exercise like treadmills and weights and stuff, but the guitar is the best upper body workout in the world. When we were playing a lot, I had Popeye forearms,
Nice.
And so I decided I was going to take up very strenuous guitar practice. And so I started driving a big old 12-string with banjo picks.
Oh, wow.
For an hour a day. And I got my forearms back.
There it is. Look at that. And your health back too?
Yeah, we've been very organized about the pandemic thing. And Valerie has projects too.
But
oh my gosh, this podcast.
We've been super lucky. I mean, we are very fortunate to be able to do these things in our home and have our son here to do them with.
Yeah.
Because he's just a delightful human. And who knew that we would get this whole period of time to spend with him, where he wasn't distracted by his job and the outside world. It's just awesome having him here. And
it's a nice really boost for him as an artist because, he was working 9 days in a row at sometimes. And so he had to stop working and just work on art.
Yeah.
And he's 25. So this is like
this will never happen again.
A 25-year-old sabbatical. How's that?
Right?
Really.
Right?
Well said.
Exactly.
Well said.
Art sabbatical.
Yeah.
Man.
I have actually a few of John's, little snippets of John's drawings I can share.
Yeah.
Can I share my screen?
I'm going to make you a co-host.
With everyone?
Yeah. Let me do that.
So get cut off. We'll just start again.
Oh, no. Let me make you a co-host and that way you can share. Awesome. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right, let me see if I can do it here.
And while you're opening it up, I just saw that Larry Tillring said he got to watch John Smith play at 14.
Okay.
Oh my!
Oh, when he was 14.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, I believe that's what it had to be, because
Okay.
I took up guitar at 16.
Oh, okay. Look at this. All right,
Let's
I love that
see.
backdrop.
That's a friend of mine who's an artist. She's a wonderful artist. Her name's Molly Cliff Hiltz.
Okay.
And I'm trying to find
Your folder.
There we go.
Oh, nice. Look at this.
So what is this one? I haven't really read that. He's really big into battleships. And ocean stories. I think
These
this
are
is
Mal's?
This is John's.
No, this
This is
me.
John's. Okay.
Yeah. This is a book called Fortune.
Oh my God.
And then I think this is the same book.
Yeah.
There's battles and stuff in it.
And this is Mal doing, I wrote this story and Mal's illustrating it. This is XTB Generator. It's a time travel story.
But the
Is
cool
this
thing
the
about
9-year? Is this
Yes.
the 9-year epic?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Wow.
it starts in San Pedro, California,
Yeah.
in John's house.
Oh.
Like
Yeah,
this
that's
is
my house.
this is actually the kitchen
Okay.
where he grew up. And the little area that he had, there was a back area in the house that he slept on the couch. He never had a full bed the whole time he lived there. And this is,
That's the Vincent Thomas Bridge, which was like 3 blocks from my house.
yeah. So anyway,
And that's Mal's art.
it's really
Wow.
cool.
Fantastic work.
Anyway.
There's so much creativity. When you guys put together Bagtown and you had the concept of the video behind it and the whole world, the Bagtown, setup that you had there in your studio. I get to see that when we came to rehearse. Was that a collective of the both of you putting that together?
Yeah. And Malcolm, that
And
was all
Mal
Malcolm's
did too.
art.
Wow.
He did the
So
cover.
fun.
Okay.
It was so fun. But
What
that
a
record
gift.
was a blast from start to finish.
Yeah, because we kind of, maybe I shouldn't say this, but we intended it to be our final record. And so,
Really?
because we had a great band at the time. And so it's like, let's document this incredible band.
Yeah.
There's one of the few bands I've been in where everybody got along. Everybody really liked each other.
It's a rarity.
And, usually there's a goat.
Yeah.
The scapegoat,
Yeah.
Oh, if we only had a better keyboard player or whatever,
Right.
But this and that was the 7th incarnation of NU SHOOZ, if anybody's counting.
Oh my God. Tell me
The
about that band.
Bagtown.
Who was in Bagtown band?
Tim Jensen on saxophone and Paul Mazzio on trumpet and a bunch of other guys. Gary Fontaine was the bass player.
How can you not love Gary?
Johnny Riley on drums, Tracy
Johnny.
Harris, and Margaret Lynn on backup vocals.
Oh.
And when we
and
had,
Haley Horsfall.
and when we could afford it, Haley Horsfall and Haley's dad, Mike, also
Oh,
played with
really?
us for special occasion gigs like our record release party and stuff like that. So he's a
Yeah.
vibraphonist and just fantastic. So it
So-
was a really wonderful group of musicians. And John was back in the studio trying to write songs for this CD. And I'd come back. It was winter, which is the best time in Oregon, I think, because it's just raining. It's bashing rain, and all you can do is art projects, really. I mean, and go drink coffee or watch movies, read books. There's
Yeah.
nothing else to do. And so I'd go back to the studio and I'd say, "Hey, John, how are those songs coming along?" And he'd be like, "Oh, they're coming along fine," but he actually wasn't. He was writing like classical music and then some other stuff. And finally one night he decided to write some music for, there was a bag. There were a whole bunch of bags, brown paper bags from these hamburgers that he was eating from this neighborhood place. And he just started making bag puppets out of these small bags. And so these really cool looking bag puppets, and Malcolm would come over and make some too. And they were all kind of hanging out in the studio around where he was writing songs. And one night he looked around at the bags and he was like, I know, I'll write some music for the Bags. They needed some party music so they could start partying here in the studio.
And we built this whole city out of cardboard, not the one that you saw, which was later.
Okay.
But it was this sort of rough city that we kept adding to. And it took over the whole island, like a kitchen island that's in the middle of the studio.
And the Bags lived there, and
the
John
Bags
was
lived
writing
there. And then the Bags needed a theme song.
Of course they did. Yeah.
Because we had this idea that, that the album would be the music that the Bag people were listening to.
Right.
And then they needed a theme song. So that was Bagtown.
Oh my gosh.
And those songs were written really quick. You know, there's always something you want to go back and change.
Oh yeah.
But it was really quick. And then we just had a joyous time recording it because we knew, you know, maybe there's enough records in the world. So let's just make one more. You know?
Yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
Well, you've got so much history that I would imagine that so-called like final record is like one of those retired athletes, right? That just has to keep coming back and doing something else. You're so creative. I can't imagine you just seeing.
Well, we weren't doing a share thing where it's like the 7th goodbye tour, you know.
Right. Well,
it was,
you know, it felt like that a little bit when we were touring, right? You know, sometimes, but well, yeah, man, we have so many fun touring experiences together. You know, I was thinking about it. The Dominican for me was a really special one, right? Because I got to play with both you guys and Animotion at, you know, this gorgeous location in another part of the world. And the energy was so special about it, right? Because they had so many people that really transplanted back to the early 80s where they didn't have to think about pandemics and financial issues and politics and anything like that. And they could just go back to a time in their life when it was easier and fun and simpler. And it really captured that. I really felt like both Steve and the event and the patrons, and I really felt like that was such an 80s escape. And on stage with you guys, I'm such a fan of you anyway, you know. So when I was playing, there's a shot that the photographer Kelly Sweet got above. She stood above me and took this picture above my head when I was playing with you guys. And there's one shot where it's the back of my head facing you guys, and John's turned towards you, Val, and all smiles. You know, it's really an endearing picture. And then there's a shot of me looking straight up, just, you know, beaming ear to ear. I felt like,
I remember that picture.
How fortunate was I to be there with amazingly beautiful people in this gorgeous place and, you know, getting paid for it. What the heck, man?
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, just,
we're the lucky ones for sure.
Really.
Well, that was a great show. And it was so fun to have a different drummer. You know, we love our drummer, but it was just so fun and interesting to have someone else drive the band.
Johnny's an amazing drummer, and I was so fortunate just to get to sit in and, you know, fill the shoes for a little bit when he couldn't do the king. So that was, I mentioned to him a couple of times. We've chatted on Facebook, and I just said, you know, thanks for letting me, you know, take your band for a spin a little bit. But there's so much positivity. Just before we walked on stage there, and we also did that show up in Washington, up towards Seattle.
Right.
And I remember, in Everett, there was kind of a powwow, you know, before we walk on, and you mentioned Margaret and Tracy, you know, singing with the band too. You, Val, you've got this way of bringing together those voices that it was so powerful. It was like this gospel band back behind you, you know, this gospel choir, you know, behind the band. And I think, you know, it's really fun to be around you guys. And so I didn't really feel like it was very fair, you know, for me to get to play the show and hang out with you guys and play with my buddies in Animotion and get paid for it. But, I'll count my blessings where I get them. You had mentioned twice, Val, in this conversation about lucky. But you also mentioned fortunate earlier, that you, in this pandemic, you have each other and Mal at this time where it's uninterrupted, that you guys can focus on positive things. And I've also mentioned on my show, I go back and forth about my belief in luck, because I feel like so many opportunities that people have has been what has been manifested by your own actions, right? I believe that some things just appear, out of fortune or whatever circumstance, but I think so many things are fortunate. And I really do believe in that. I believe that we're very fortunate to have, both of you guys have had incredible health scares in the last several years. And like, Valerie, I don't know how comfortable you are talking about, your recovery from cancer scare, but it's amazing. You're this dynamo that overcame those things, and you're a voice for people to not only get tested, but also really make changes in their life to become better. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And I'm actually happy to talk about it because it's, first of all, the story has a happy ending.
Yeah.
I mean, right from the beginning, I was, my surgeon, I had breast cancer, and I got diagnosed in 2011 because of a mammogram. And I hadn't had one in a couple of years because we moved, and I don't know, there's a lot going on. And I just finally went, okay, I got to go get one. And I'm so glad I did, because for some women, you don't feel these lumps. I had to learn how to feel the lump that was there because it was hard to find. But it was growing fast. But the surgeon said, you're going to have to die from something else. And in my first meeting with her, she said that. And I was like, okay, I'm going with that story.
Yeah.
And I did have to go through chemo and I chose to go through chemo, radiation, and a lumpectomy because I didn't want to ever have to deal with it again. I wanted to do everything I possibly could to be healthy on the other side. So I just, I had a great health team, which is also really important, that you trust your surgeon, that you have. I had a naturopathic doctor that works with oncologists that was helping me with my diet and all the other stuff. And I was also incredibly, so here's the thing about luck and fortune.
Yeah.
I loved what you're talking about, because I actually looked up the difference one time.
Really?
Yes, because I was curious about what is the difference between luck and fortune.
Sure.
Luck is something that happens to you that you have nothing to do with. That is just the luck of the draw, as they say. It's like getting the bad card. Fortune is something that you do have a hand in. And that's because you worked hard, or you were, made sure that you were at the right place at the right time with the right skills, or those kinds of things, or that you were careful with your money, or that you those kinds of things. So I think both apply here. I was fortunate in that I went to get that mammogram. I was lucky in that the timing was the way it was, so that it hadn't grown beyond the point where I could, be on the other side of it and be healthy.
Sure.
So anyway, that's part of the story. So being in the right place at the right time. But also, I'm lucky in that I was born where I was. I have the resources that I do. Right when that all happened, we also were very lucky in that, and it's luck and fortune again. You could make a case for either, in that the year before, our publishing admin company had come to us and said, there's this song that this guy named Man recorded, and it heavily uses I Can't Wait in the song. And we always have to give permission for those things to go out there in the world. We listened to the song, the lyrics were good. We liked what he had done with it.
It was positive.
It was positive. And so, we said yes. So then 50 Cent found it and added a piece to it, put it on his website, I think for free for a little while.
Okay.
And it went crazy. And it was a song called Buzzin'. That ended up becoming a hit in 2012 or 11, 10, one of those years. That's 11 was when I got cancer. Yeah. So when the publishing income from this, because John wrote I Can't Wait, so he got a percentage of the publishing income from this song going out to the radio. The money from that that it made being on the radio came in right when the medical bills were coming in. So I was able to heal without worrying about how we were going to pay for the thousands and thousands of dollars worth of medical bills that, of course, you know, I had the surgery in the fall, I had all the treatments over the wintertime and into the spring. So instead of it just being in one nice year package,
Right.
it was spread out in two. And if you have self-employed health insurance, as you know, if you're lucky as a musician to have that, you're just, you know, your deductible super high.
Oh yeah.
So anyway,
your premium's super high.
Yeah.
Well, how did that
So
make you
that's
feel,
why-
knowing that it came from Buzzin', from the 50 Cent sort of stardom? Was that a little uncomfortable to you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Why would it be? I'm curious.
Yeah.
Because
Why do you
you
think
mentioned that you got the first right of refusal when the first artist came and took a part of your song, and you said it was great. We approved it. It was positive. And then I wondered if what 50 Cent did was then translate that really positive message into something that was more like, hey, let's, you know, get stoned and shoot somebody or something. You know, I mean, I don't know anything about his.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, you know, it was mitigated by the fact that he made it huge. You know, I don't think we might have approved what he did. Because he was like, yo, I'm going to cap somebody with my Uzi.
Oh, yeah. So that is what. Okay.
That's not really the kind of thing that we would approve.
Yeah.
But thank God for, you know, okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a tough thing.
Weird. I just don't, I guess I'm not a lyric person.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
Me neither.
I was like,
Charlie Parker.
because the rest of the song's really fun. So I was just like, okay, you know, whatever.
Oh.
Plus
And
I
it was already a fait accompli, you know?
it was out there.
It was out there.
Nothing you can do about that.
Up, so what are you going to do?
Right.
You know, man, there's a curse and a blessing, right? I mean, the huge blessing is that you have the publishing for I Can't Wait, that, you know, you're recouping those royalties wherever they are sort of circulated. And you really have had that out there in a bunch of different avenues, right? It's been on commercial TV for like commercials, right? I think a big major company used it for commercials this last year.
Target.
Is that
like
okay?
A couple of years ago.
5 years ago or more now. Yeah,
Okay.
2016.
That was huge.
Yeah.
It was about the last time I
So
started
that's
watching
been really
TV.
helpful. That's made it possible for us to be at home this time and not have gigs and not be, you know, worried.
Yeah.
And so we're very fortunate in that way, for sure.
Yeah.
See,
You know what?
work?
and you're filling your time with a remarkable podcast, Valerie. Your podcast is focused on vocalists and singers. And what brought that about with you? Because you were an instructor as well, right?
Right. I taught voice for 20 years privately. And when we started doing shows again, we were gone so much and it was hard to schedule. So I just kind of went to managing the band and being on those gigs and stuff. But there's always the teacher part of me. So I've been creating these online courses for singers, which I haven't released any yet, but they're almost there.
Okay.
And one of the ideas that I had, because I don't know everything about anything. I mean, I have so many wonderful friends and past students who are fantastic singers and have lots of different experiences to share. And I wanted to do something that would also, okay, so here's the thing. I think if you want to do music so badly that you can't imagine doing anything else, that's a vocation. That means that's something that you choose to do because you would do it whether you were successful or not. You have to do it. And so when people would come to my studio and say, you know, I really want to know, I want to make this my career. Should I do it? I'm like, do anything else. Just, you know, love music. Don't make it pay your bills,
right?
Because it'll break your heart if you're really putting that kind of pressure on the thing that you love to do. However, if you are okay with rejection, if you're okay with failure, if you do it, no matter whether you want it, got money paid for it or not, then maybe you do have the wherewithal to make it your career and to try for that. So I guess the podcast was an outgrowth of just wanting to let singers know that no matter, we're all reaching to be the best singers that we can be. And sometimes that means that the world will be in a place where we are fortunate enough to be at the right time, in the right time, at the right place, with the right product to make it. And other times that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I know so many great singers who have not made it in the way that financially, but that have astounding voices and have had incredible experiences doing what they do.
Made a life. Yeah.
Yeah. Made a life out of it. So that's why it's called living a vocal life, not, it's not about how to necessarily get a career. How'd you get famous? Yeah. But it also shows that even the people who have made it have done so usually through great adversity, and that it always takes longer than you think it will. The person that I just interviewed on the podcast is Carlos Batty, going back to the Buzzin' song. He was one of the co-writers on it on the original version with Man. And he has an incredible voice and is just now pivoting after writing songs for Madonna and Justin Bieber and
Bruno Mars
really? And Man for the song Buzzin', which was our connection, thanks to another friend of ours who put us together. But he is pivoting to being a singer himself now after, 10, 12 years of writing songs for other people. And so, there's all these interesting stories. None of them are the same, as from interviewing people, and people's stories are fascinating. And I love being able to draw them out and then put them together again in a way that hopefully gives singers some inspiration and some practical tips on, what to do in different situations and things like that.
It is inspiring. I've listened to the podcast, and I think there's so much that's great about what you present, because it is informative. You talked about it being inspirational for those people looking for just positive affirmation, and it's not all fluff. I love the fact that you, as an instructor, would tell certain artists that they need to evaluate what it is about the music that needs to be so important to them, and maybe take a second look at having it be a career. It's harsh reality, but truthfully, they have to be so passionate about music and not they should never depend on it being financially sustainable if they want to be artistic about it. If it's a job, that's just the way it is. But I love it when music doesn't become a job. It's great when it can become a channel, for something else inside you. And some of those other questions that people had are kind of related to that. Jim Jelvig from the UK. He said, your music has always had such a real full sound with great instrumentation. So when you guys were talking about the first version of the band, when you were doing cover stuff and you had Earth, Wind and Fire tunes, and you were doing, I'm guessing you had horns back then. Am I right?
4
horns. Okay. And then backup singers as well. Valerie was doing backups and percussion. So obviously lots of full sound, great instrumentation. He was asking what influences you both had, but I think his next question was how you approached songwriting together. Valerie, you mentioned that John wrote I Can't Wait, but was there a collaboration on a lot of the stuff, or was this primarily John being the primary songwriter?
John was the primary songwriter. I mean, It really was his band that I joined. And so he was always the lead, Yeah. What do you say about being the band leader and being a dictator or something?
A band democracy doesn't work in bands. It's got to be a benevolent dictatorship.
I'm glad you throw benevolent in there. Yeah.
There's no direction. We started as a 4-piece band in 1979, and my original vision was to have the band be a singing group too, like the Temptations.
Okay.
that like it would be emphasis on soul vocals. But then everybody in the band brought in tunes. And so there was this mishmash of stuff. You know, one guy wanted to play Eric Clapton and another guy would bring in a Toto song, you know, and I was bringing in all this Temptations and, you know, Motown vocal group stuff because I had a vision. But it ended up being just a mess. And then about a year later, I was playing in a rehearsal band, big band that met on Sunday nights at the Union Hall.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. The Walter Bridges big band. This old black guy character led it. His charts actually had mold on them.
Oh.
They're so old.
Oh my.
But anyway, I nabbed my first horn section out of that big band.
Really?
And then
Okay.
NU SHOOZ started to have a direction.
Okay.
You know, there was like, because the two founding members, myself and this guy Larry Hagan, we came out of a calypso Latin band called Felicidades in the late 70s, and then that sort of imploded. And the next thing was we started NU SHOOZ together.
Okay.
And then he left. Everybody left but me, of the original 4-piece.
What does that say about you, John?
That, you know, even benevolent dictators are overthrown
Right.
eventually.
That's the way they overthrew you. They just left the band entirely. Okay.
Yeah, it's like baby Doc Duvalier, who, you know. But yeah, so there was a direction, you know. There was a direction, there was an aesthetic that would override everything, you know, that would put a sort of a branding stamp on it. And I forget what the question was.
Songwriting.
Yeah, like how you approach songwriting together. Is there, so even if you come up,
well, you know, in those days, I was always good for a verse and a half.
Okay.
And then I would kind of give a lot of it to Valerie and just say, finish it. And she actually did some, on her third single, Should I Say Yes, Valerie really brought it home, you know, but I would come up with the chords and the reason for the song, and then just kind of go, oh, can you write another verse and a half or the B section or something?
You know,
and that's how,
explain that a little
never
bit.
Really actually sat down like Carole King and Jerry Goffin and wrote like that.
That's because you didn't work in 50 Cent's band. But no, the you just said that you came up with the verse and the reason, right?
Yeah.
You explained that. So that's interesting. You know, so it's conceptually, you said, Valerie, this is where I'm going with this. The reason of the song is that this is what I have in mind. This is the picture I'm trying to paint, and help me fill in the lines a little bit. Is that kind of how you approached it with her then?
Interestingly enough, I think at that time, in that time period, in the 80s, when we were working on these songs, again, he was more about the architecture, and the lyrics came last.
Yeah. Which is why our lyrics suck. But, except for the ones that Valerie wrote.
Okay, good catch.
But then later on, we did this project called NU SHOOZ Orchestra.
Yeah.
That evolved out of, it was, what did we call it?
Jazz pop cinema.
Jazz pop cinema, because it evolved out of our love of jazz, pop music, and movie music all together. And we were at this place in our lives where our son was growing up, we'd put him to bed, we'd go out on the back porch and have a martini and talk about how we wanted to deconstruct all the musical, all the music that we loved and mash it up together in a different way. Really? And part of the reason that is one of my favorite records that we've ever done artistically, it's called Pandora's Box, is that John finally discovered lyrics through watching a documentary about
Bob Dylan,
right, called No Way Home.
No Direction
Home by Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and he watched that movie probably about 50 times.
Oh, more than that. You know, I just had it on rotation for a year, you know, and I finally discovered what lyrics could do and what Dylan had done because he liked modernist poetry, especially Rimbaud, and you know, and the beat poets and stuff. And what he did was he stuck it onto old coal miner songs and stuff, you know. And so I finally, in 2006, after many, many years of doing this, because I wasn't a lyric guy either. Not at all.
Right.
Like it took a long time to realize what a great songwriter Hendrix was, even though I'd listened to him for 25 years.
Sure.
I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, well, you know, that's a good lyric scheme. And there's all these tricks. There's one called the cracked mosaic. I learned from Lowell George and Little Feat.
Hey, John, 1 second.
Like
John?
Yeah.
Your internet dropped for just a second. You said the cracked mosaic came from where? From
Lowell George in Little Feat.
Okay.
You know what that is, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And
and it would be like I went out to the store that I inherited from my grandparents. My grandparents were, you know, so it was like this very conversational way to construct lyrics that wasn't like the 80s was like fire, desire, away, play.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you could predict the next line that was going to come.
Absolutely.
And the person who exploded all that was Kurt Cobain.
Mm-hmm.
Nirvana, their rhyme schemes and their lyric organization, architecture was different from everything that had come before, including the Beatles.
Fascinating.
You know, so you know, there was a new paradigm, and I had this new paradigm when it was too late to use it in my pop career. But we made this orchestra record, and I think a lot of the music followed the lyrics rather than the other way around.
Yeah, interesting.
And it was just really a fun way to work, like turn the whole songwriting thing on its ear.
I need to go back and listen to the record now, knowing that that's what really was a turning point for you guys. How cool, right? To be able to discover something completely new. When you mentioned that documentary and looking at Dylan's lyric sort of transformation was, you know, there were a bunch of artists that I'm so late to discover those things. You know, I couldn't stand voices of certain singers, right?
Valerie, Robert Plant, I couldn't stand his voice.
Well, I hate to admit it, like Petty, I wasn't a Tom Petty fan or Neil Young. Really? But then when I listened to this music, the lyrics, I think, just genius, beautiful, amazing. Springsteen, after seeing him live and seeing the magic of Springsteen live, it was a whole different experience for me that I never would. And I'm embarrassed to say it, you know, because, you know, I'm older than I should be to recognize these things, but my kids are the ones that cue me into a lot of the stuff. You know, they know that.
That's great.
And my youngest is a huge Beatles fan, and he tells me really the magic behind a lot of the Beatles stuff before I hear it. And I think
like what's brilliant about it.
Yeah. And really where the songs came from and, you know, chord structures and melody and how different those things were. I just knew that they made me feel good. Right. You know, and then,
well, you're a drummer.
That's right. I have never claimed to be a, you know, real intelligent, pathologist, but but
we don't know any of those either.
but yeah, like lyrics just didn't register, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, all of it was like kind of.
Well, and isn't that the cool thing about music is that as there's always more layers.
Yes.
There are always more layers, or there's another instrument to learn or another kind of music to learn. You know, there's
on your instrument.
There's just so much. And then the listening that you do deepens through the context that you're living your life, or that other people show you through the lens that, like your son, you know, that he's hearing the music through. It's just, it's never boring.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
if you explore, right? I mean, if you're just complacent, you listen to the same music over and over again, and you don't get beyond just listening to it in the car to get from point A to point B, then it might get pretty boring. But I think for me, I love the magic of rediscovery. I love a whole new style, and my other son is into hip hop, but he was a hardcore Rush fan early on. And
Rush, yeah.
And I never.
Another singer that's annoying, but you got to peel away the layers.
Well, he was the one that said, I told him that the drummers that I emulated weren't Neil Peart from Rush. While he was all about Rush. And he said, but Neil wrote all the lyrics for the Rush songs. So my son said, Dad, tell me the lyrics that John Bonham wrote for Zeppelin. And I'm like, okay. So I appreciated the
Here's
fact.
the lyric John Bonham wrote for Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, when the levee breaks, it's all you need.
Closed.
Yep. That's all
right?
You're right. And that's what made me feel so at home, right? So yeah, but I'm grateful that our kids can be the
they bring us up to speed.
And the fact that you guys are able to be creative with your son, I mean, the fact that Mal jumps in with you guys and is doing artistic projects and you guys can do them all together is, it's a blessing, man. I love it. That may lead to the third question that we had in this list from Brian. He said he wants to know how you continue to be so alive and vibrant. And I would imagine, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. Let me have you spell that one out, Valerie.
That would be that Deal with the Devil we made back in like the early 80s.
Don't talk about that promoter that way, Valerie. We said we weren't going to do that.
No, actually, I think that the most important thing in my life is to keep learning, and if I'm learning something new and I'm getting to apply it to something that I love, that's the be all end all. And I hope to be doing that for the rest of my life.
That's a gift. How about you, John?
Well, I think my philosophy comes down to if you wake up in the morning with an idea of something you really like to do, that's golden. That's the pot of gold right there. And also, Mal and I have been tossing around this philosophy of art as surfing. Like surfers just go out every day. They're not trying to get a medal or sell 1 million records or anything. They're just trying to catch a good wave.
Yeah.
And some days you catch a wave and some days you don't. But you go out every day.
Yeah.
And you hit the surf, And so what we're doing now is really art surfing. We go out every day, and sometimes you have a good day for drawing hands, which Mal calls a good hand day. and some days like you suck, but you go out every day and surf. So philosophically, that's what keeps us going. And fortunately, we all wake up with ideas of something artistic to do every day, because art, as you know, doesn't rely on inspiration. It's a machine. We call it the art machine, and you just turn it on and it goes.
Well, let me ask you then, do you have a morning ritual that starts that off, that at least gets the machine jump started?
I do.
Yeah.
I am so.
What's your ritual, Valerie?
I am so routinized. It's almost scary.
Okay. Yeah.
I wake up. I do a quick morning meditation. I eat breakfast and read something that feeds me in some way, either something that I'm learning or something that I need, inspiration from. I do not go on social media until lunchtime, usually, which can be anywhere from 1 to 2 in the afternoon. And then the next couple of hours after breakfast, after I've done that, and sometimes I journal a little bit, actually, too. I have a gratitude journal and I write in a diary online. But then I write for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, depending. And that's because I'm working on these courses. And so I'm writing for this course, and it'll maybe turn into a book someday. I don't know. I'd love to marry the information that I'm putting in the book for singers with some of the stories that I'm hearing from the singers that I'm interviewing. So I think I have a good 5 to 10 years of writing ahead of me. And I'm so excited about it.
Really?
And I've had some really wonderful friends who've also helped me to learn how to be a better writer. My friend Lori Mendoza, who was our neighbor in the past, and we got together once a week for a year and a half, and she helped edit my writing and really made me a better writer. So that's the learning part, and it's the art part too. If I think we've talked a lot in our household too about how there's this moment when you are first starting down an artistic path where you realize, after the first assignment, that you really have a long way to go. And that can be really hard. But if you make it through that beginner phase, and then you do start to get better, which happens around a year and a half to 2 years in almost every art form that I've ever done, you start to gain a little bit of mastery. That's the most exciting part.
Absolutely.
I think it takes 5 to 10 years really to get great at something, but it's that first year and a half to 2 years where you're making incremental process. You get to that point and it's like, oh boy, now I have some fluency in whatever it is that you're learning. It's really a fun place to be.
Wow. That, at the end of the day, when our time is up, I would bet you two are going to look back at not only the contributions you've made, but the steps you've made to make your world better. And it really is fun to see how much effort you've put into that. Some people coast through life never having an impact on other people or making their surroundings any better. But I really do see that the two of you collectively have exponentially made people's worlds better. It's fascinating to me. I love it. I knew the first time I talked to you that you were those kinds of energy people. And I do want to hear about your rituals. John, can you tell me a little bit about yours?
Oh, well, if Valerie has any writing for me to do, like the NU SHOOZ monthly newsletter or something, there's this window between 11 or 10:30 and 11:30, and all writing happens then.
Oh,
yeah,
that's it.
And then I go and I do Spanish on Duolingo.
Okay.
Which I've been doing for 3 or 5 years, and I still don't speak Spanish. And then I do some art, and then think about dinner, make dinner. I watch Jeopardy.
Okay.
I've watched Jeopardy almost every day since 1986.
We call him Mr. Jeopardy, in fact.
Yeah. Okay.
It just fits with the way I remember information. So,
okay.
And then at night is the art party, which Mal and I just like do 5 hours of 5-hour shift as artists back in the studio doing our graphic novels and stuff. And so that's pretty much how it goes.
Yeah. Every night, art party?
Every night.
God, that's
Christmas
great.
and New Year included.
Beautiful. An art party.
Yeah. And people like Frank Zappa worked like that. They just worked every day because that's what they wanted to do. Holidays used to bug me because my life was so fun, being in a band and stuff. And, you'd have to go to a family thing for Christmas or something and do what we call sit around being nice.
That's what he calls gatherings.
And that drives me crazy because I just want to do art 365 days a year, whatever art, music, art, literature, which I named my company Malco because it's our son's Mal, but music, art, literature.
Oh, that makes sense. I love it. I didn't
What
realize.
about you?
Yeah,
Kevin?
what's your deal?
Yeah.
I do have rituals, but I wanted to mention something really cool. Your perspective on art and the evolution of what makes it comfortable to yourself is really fascinating to me. My dad is a printmaker, painter, sculptor.
Wow.
Cool. I
His
didn't
whole
know
life.
That's
that.
great.
Yeah, I've got on the other sides of this brick wall, there's art all over here. I edited his quote unquote podcast episode to launch. I was going to launch it yesterday as my 100th episode of All Access Live, but you guys are my episode 100.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Wow, great.
But he is an incredible artist, and he was an educator for a long time. He took an early sabbatical and never went back. And he is such a creative person. I would love for him to meet you guys, because there are so many elements of your humor and your creative space that I think are like his. When you talked about holidays and the obligatory sort of get together and be nice, all of my dad's family, all my dad's friends, everywhere we would go, that we would go for whatever, 4th of July or holidays, but they were all creative, artistic people. They were all these amazing, fascinating people that were so inspiring in a bunch of ways that there was never boredom. There was never, the crotchety old people talking about how, shitty politics were, or, anything like that. It was always really fun and spirited and inspiring. And so, I think about my dad, trying to talk to him about doing this podcast where I wanted to go through the evolution of some of his work. He's 86, but he has 2 shows coming up this year. He's still showing.
Good for him.
Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to get behind the scenes a little bit in his process. And so, John, when you mentioned that you and Malik will go out and some days you'll have great surfing days and some days you're just there surfing and it's just not great hand day,
Yeah. You can spend all day paddling out,
Big time. There's a piece that my dad was showing me in this, the podcast, that he said, I've got to this point where I don't know what I want to do with this piece, this section of the piece. I may just leave this here. I might add to it. I know what I want it to say. I said, well, how long has it been since you touched it? He said, 9 months, 8 months.
Said, wow. Interesting.
Wow. He just puts it aside and goes to work on other surfing, but he's out there every day. He's been out there every day ever since I've been alive. I'm 49. Wow. And so his ritual is inspiring in a huge way. For him, it's maddening because it's a curse and a blessing. There's some days when the inspiration or the machine doesn't run, then he's frustrated, he's down on himself, but he's an artist through and through. And I love that part of him. I think it's just, it's something that's so different than what corporate America sort of tries to channel out, people's roles and identities. So my ritual, I focused a lot on negative things for a long time. And over the last few years, I realized my issues were struggling with things I had no control over, So when you mentioned getting to social media afternoon, I don't even touch anything before I wake up and do a little meditation. I have a gratitude journal as well. I spend a few minutes just writing down the things that I'm immediately grateful for and something I really need to let go from the night before or the day before.
Nice.
I have to let go. And that's my challenge. That's my goal this year. I don't have New Year's resolutions, but I wanted to be able to reduce the drama and mental clutter in my brain. And so much of the stuff that's happening right now, especially, is outside my control.
Right on.
This I can control. A conversation with my buddies and connecting with people that I really admire is something that is a good step forward. It's progress. I don't expect perfection. I just want something better. And I want to make my environment better. And sometimes it just comes from conversation, just to hear you and I, the 3 of us, talking about what we're doing, to keep ourselves from going crazy, to keep ourselves on the right direction. I need a trajectory, right? So I equate a lot of my progress with, I see the goal in mind. I want the sensibility of Fred Rogers. I want to be Mr. Rogers, He just unconditional love, kindness. He wanted to produce, a great positive spirit. I'm never going to be Gandhi. I'm never going to be Fred Rogers. I'm never going to be the Dalai Lama, but that's Everest to me. So if I aim my trajectory towards Everest and I can get to a base camp, at some point, base
Nice.
camps for me are all I want. And so those rituals help, and I grab a cup of coffee, I sit on my back patio. That's where my meditation happens. And before I start getting into client stuff, or because I have my web business and that thankfully is starting to, pay a mortgage again. I was focusing on the gigs that were canceled, and it was starting to affect me in a really bad way. I'd wake up and text messages from the band saying, guys, we've got another cancellation. So I told Mike, hey, unless there's a booking, you don't have to tell me about cancellations. I'm going to assume everything's gone. And let's just talk about, let's talk about the positive. Cause to me, that's a horrible way to start my day. And even when I was doing social media and I'd look at, look where I was this time last year, or look where I would have been. So when I let go of some of that stuff, it is so cathartic. And that is honestly, these kinds of conversations to me mean the world to me, as do you. I really do feel like I guess I'm fortunate to have come across, wonderful people like you. And I think about the people that have that I feel have been parallels in my connection with NU SHOOZ. Terry Courier is one of those that helped facilitate conversation with you at one of his Christmas parties, Val. I remember sitting and talking to you there and looking around the room at what Terry Courier has done. For those of you watching that don't know, Terry Courier, he's a visionary. He runs a music store. He owns a record store. Believe it or not, a successful record store that's still alive in this holy crazy time. And he has really given his life to promoting music education, the spirit of what music was all about. And so he would do an annual Christmas party where he would get everyone together and give things away. He had amazing gifts. He'd dress up as Santa Claus and he'd feed people and he would serve drinks. And he really was like Santa Claus in so many ways. And at one of those events, I remember seeing you there, and another friend who's on this chat right now, Mike Skill, who another just incredibly beautiful spirited human being. And talking to some people like that at these events, I realized, man, if you just didn't put yourself out there in a situation where you could find and seek these people out and make connections with those people, life would be not only so boring, but really disappointing in a lot of ways. And so a lot of people that jumped in on the chat have gotten to meet you guys on tour, whether they're Portlanders or they got to see you on the last tour or so. And I think they could agree with me that there's something really, really special about you both. It's probably what kept you married this long. It's been over 40 years now, right?
Yeah, I've
45.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Jeopardy.
Well,
what is 45?
We count the 7 years that we lived in sin before we got married. We were together 7 years, and they all count. So 45.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think, just.
But it's all a practice, right? I mean, what you're talking about, we just watched the Fred Rogers movie, and we've watched the documentary, which, we both cried all the way through. And John's not really a crier. So when I reached
movies,
when I took his hand after the movie and his sleeve was all wet, I was like, what happened? And he's like, I was crying.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mr. Rogers, he practiced kindness all the time. I mean, that was
deliberately.
Yeah, deliberately. So I think you're on your way, Kev. I really do.
Yeah.
You know what?
Your humanity really comes out in this.
Yes. And it's astounding to me that you've done 100 interviews. This is something that an introvert could probably never pull off. I've done 12 podcast episodes in a year, or 16 podcast episodes in a year, counting solo ones. I can't imagine doing 100.
That's
addicting. Who you are. You love people and you feel deeply, and the combination's great. So
the only other thing I'd rather be doing, I think, is playing on stage. And I did just get a booking yesterday for a drive-in show in a week and a half.
Oh, cool.
And I was, I'm watching those kinds of gigs and thinking, how do you respond to honking? I mean, that just seems like kind of a weird concept. But at this point, to get on
You
stage,
have your own squeeze horn.
oh yeah,
Oh,
I'll bring it with. I will. I just think that in order for me to sort of feel my, my purpose, I need to get back on stage. And so I'm looking forward to it. It'll be just an interesting local thing, but I'm glad that there are people that are out there that are trying to do this in a way to still bring people live music, but be sensitive to
and safe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they can stay in the car. I can be a long way away, and we'll still have fun with it. Do you guys have any live performance, even if it's on streaming broadcasts at all?
nope.
Okay. Well, that's okay. Because I think, what we have is time between now and say next summer where they'll come up with a vaccine, they'll test it thoroughly, everybody will find a new way, and then we'll get back on stage and we can literally be on the couch again backstage where we will have more heckles and fun and spread positivity. We'll make art, not war, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And just thanks for having us on your show. And thanks to everyone who we're not seeing in the chat, who's been listening and watching. And are there any other questions that we didn't answer that are on that list that we could answer real quickly?
Oh yeah, there were a bunch of observations. There was from that list, we got through the ones that were initially set up on that list. I love that Mike Skill, he took the surfer analogy, John, and he says, surfers are about the tides and the water moving with the moon, our Earth, our solar system, our galaxy, and the universe. So he's taking a very philosophical look at
nice.
Right on.
At your
That's
day.
beautiful interpretation of that.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, right? I mean, interpretation is the name of the game and the art that we are putting out there. So I do want to, again, thank you guys for taking the afternoon and kicking off an incredible weekend. It should be like beautiful weather here in the Portland area. The 5-Star Guitar guys for getting behind All Access Live. If you're watching this and you have not yet subscribed, please go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/All Access Live with Kevin Rankin. If you're already there, just hit the subscribe button. We've got a lot of past experiences, past conversations with great people that have all been on tour with NU SHOOZ, like Bill Wadhams of Animotion and Cutting Crew and Wang Chung. And I've got the Vapors coming up in a couple of days. I'm really looking forward to that. It'll be a lot of fun.
That's fun.
So the subscribe to it, it'll really help pick this up, and we'll take it to the next level. Hopefully be back on stage doing this thing in real life as soon as we get to be safe. So Valerie Day, John Smith, thank you guys both so much. And thanks again to Audix Microphones and 5-Star Guitars for being here. Thank you all for chiming in with your chats. And how lucky are we that we got to hang out with NU SHOOZ today? Is that awesome or what?
Hey, it's a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you guys.
It's good to see it too.
And say my best to Mal, please, you guys. I can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
So people that want to know more about Valerie's podcast, they can actually go to valerieday.com.
It's ValerieDaySings.com.
ValerieDaySings.com. All right.
Yeah. And the podcast is called Living a Vocal Life.
Okay.
So if you are listening to podcasts on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Stitcher or wherever, that's where you can find it. Just search for that.
Living a Vocal Life. I love it. Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. You are just wonderful human beings. I love you both.
We love you too, Kevin.
Man. Okay, you guys stay safe. Have a wonderful weekend. And thanks again, everybody, for watching. You have a great day.
Over now.
All right. Bye-bye.